Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Another webinar on our webinar summer series here. Today, we're going to focus on the Adobe Web SDK Insider Knowledge panels. We had some consultants who were able to get in and have the opportunity to be in Adobe's 12-week early access program to get to know the tool and use it. So they're going to go over kind of their insider tips and tricks, what they learned. JP is going to be our moderator, and then we have Andrew Johns, our practice lead of digital experience optimization, and Jeff, one of our senior consultants, who's going to walk us through their experience with the tool before we get into some Q&A. If you have any questions about Softcrylic or want to request services or curious about what we do, always reach out, info@softcrylic.com. With that, Jeff, take it away.
All right, hey guys, thanks for joining. First, before we kind of hop into the panel, I wanted to set the stage of really what the Web SDK is. And then as well, take you through, if you aren't familiar with Adobe beta programs or early access programs, it's pretty cool. Andy and I got to join this one. This was about a 12-week program. And it's really to get practitioner feedback on new product sets they're going to release. So there's weekly assignments. There is actual weekly meetings where you have one-on-one feedback with the product managers, which is really cool. And it's really an open forum for kind of the community to get together and see how the new product is rolling out before it's at general availability. So with that, I'm going to go into just kind of give everyone a high-level overview of what the Web SDK is. And we have some really good slides from Adobe that they gave us as part of this beta program that I just wanted to review before hopping in. So really the current state of Adobe solutions is each individual Experience Cloud product uses their own pre-acquisition data collection stack. And then each product has their own data collection SDK, their own domains, and their own edge servers. So if you think about it, Analytics, Adobe Target, Audience Manger, so forth. And really none of these libraries were built to work with one another. And cross-solution and AEP use cases require these disparate libraries to be interdependent, which really causes a lot of deployment friction. So what is it? Essentially, the Web SDK sends data to the Adobe Experience Cloud platform, as well as Analytics, Target, and Audience Manager. It leverages a single data request and a single data model, and it sends the data to the edge network, which is really a combination of Adobe servers, AWS, and Azure. It's geo-distributed, it leverages first-party domains, it's server-side, and it is much faster. The stats on it is the JavaScript library is 50% faster, 70% smaller, which uses 70% less bandwidth. And the speed, because it is one request from the page, it is faster, it's over HTTP2, and uses geo DNS routing. So just to kind of set the stage, a standard implementation today, you basically get the libraries and the documents. So from Adobe, so you have the activation piece, you physically putting it on the website. So ECID service at measurement, at.js, you go deploy it on your website, it communicates with your website, and then it sends data to all these different edge networks. So this is just showing all the different edges the data collection happens at. With launch, launch really helps from a data activation standpoint. So it could hold your ECID service, your at measurement, your DIL code for DMP, your at.js code, and it activates it on the customer website, but it's still sending out to different edge networks, right? All the same locations. So launch really helps with the activation piece, but you still have these disparate edge networks. And where we're really going with Web SDK is one Web SDK that's hosted on your website with key value pairs and XDM, which we'll talk a lot about in this. And it's a single request to the Adobe Edge networks. And then the Edge networks send the data to the product sets you want. So like Analytics, Target, Audience Manager, so forth. And then this is really the best slide that kind of shows the AEP Edge network. You have your data collection stack here on the left. So the actual Web SDK communicates with the AEP Edge network, and then it sends that data into the Adobe applications. So analytics, Audience Manager, Visitor ID service, Adobe Target, and so forth. The biggest thing to take away, it's one JavaScript library, it's one Adobe beacon, one data stream, and one server-side destination. So with that, I think we're gonna hop into the panel. I am gonna send it back to JP, and we'll go from there.
All right, awesome, thanks for that, Jeff. So now that we've established what the Adobe Web SDK is, I'm going to ask some of those burning questions that we're all asking ourselves about this new world of data collection, right? And so I have a group of questions that are, around the product itself, then about tag managers, followed by how we think it'll impact on data layers, analytics, and target. And then finally, we're going to end with some closing remarks. In the meantime, you guys have Q&A box or chat box. You can ask as many questions as you want. In fact, first 5 people to ask questions will ship our famous Best Friends for eVars t-shirt to you. So we'll work with you to get that figured out. And worst case scenario, if we don't have time to answer them, we'll just follow up via email to those questions. So definitely bring those questions in. So that said, I'm gonna dive into the first question. I'm gonna start with you, Jeff. So around the product. Do you need to have the Experience platform to use the new Web SDK?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and there's probably a lot of chatter about this. So the question is no, you do not have to be an AEP customer to leverage the Web SDK. Customers on analytics, if they just have analytics, they can leverage the Web SDK. But if you are an AEP customer and you want to implement analytics, you will have to use the Web SDK going forward. One caveat I do want to bring up is if you're an analytics customer looking to use the Web SDK, to set up the schema, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, that sends to the edge network, that schema that has to be set up at the AEP level. So Adobe probably will have to provision you access to certain elements of the AEP product to just create that schema, but just wanted to make sure you're aware of that in case that comes up. Okay,
got it. My second question is also to Jeff, and it's related to one somebody already asked in the audience. So Alloy.js, what is Alloy.js?
Sure, so I mean, even before this beta, I've had a feeling like Adobe was kind of branding the product as Alloy, but it's really, Alloy is just the name of the JavaScript library. In my mind, it's codename for the Web SDK, but Alloy is the complete rewrite of the library. So that's important. It replaces things like at.js, the visitor.js, app measurement, your DIL code, and it's all consolidated into one library. So it is a complete rewrite of all the different Adobe product sets into one.
Okay, got it. And that actually goes very nicely with my next question, which I'm gonna ask you, Andy. Are those individual libraries for Adobe, Target, Audience Manager, are those going to be going away? Are they deprecated?
No, they're not going away, at least not anytime soon. I mean, you can still use all the individual libraries, all the individual launch extensions per product if you want. So yeah, there is no, a migration plan like there is for DTM to launch right now. So there's no sunsetting or anything like that communicated. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if a few years down the road, maybe they start pushing people in that direction. But as of right now, no, these two things can live together simultaneously.
Okay, all right, good. That probably, reduces anxiety for a lot of people who just migrated to launch. So is it true though that we can send a single beacon? I've seen that a lot.
Yeah, so on paper and in theory, yes, absolutely. That's the way it works. That's the way it was designed to work. In practice, it depends. So it depends on your site. So let's just take Target and Analytics, for example. Normally, Target would have to fire very, very early on the page because it's making DOM manipulations and whatnot. And Target might not need all the same data that Analytics needs. So if your site is set up in such a way where your analytics stuff kind of comes in later, Well, you don't want to hold up the target call all the way to wait for analytics. So you still want to have two different calls. So it really just depends on your site, the availability of the data you need for each solution. So yes, technically it supports it, but it really depends on the, how your site is architected and how your data becomes available for each solution.
Got it. Okay. So functionality is there. Theoretically, we
Absolutely.
can do it.
Yep.
But yeah, I guess it'll depend at the end of the day on how the site is architected. And
yeah, it's a very forward-looking solution. So some of the capabilities may not be immediately, beneficial to you now, but these are things that you should be thinking about for any sort of site re-architecture, to be able to take advantage of, just some of the additional capabilities of the Web SDK.
got it. Yeah, that's a good message to all those product managers or IT guys out there. To think about, this in the future. Cool, thanks. I want to switch gears a little bit. So tag management systems. Geoff, back to you. Do I need launch to deploy the Web SDK?
Yeah, high level, no, you don't. In full transparency, we have, Andy and I, we only implemented this using launch. I have not tested it on another tag management system, but I will say Adobe Launch is going to make it way easier to implement this. And what I mean by that is Adobe Launch will be really easy at taking your client-side variables you have on your website and mapping it to the XDM and where you want to send that data, because Launch has this, it's basically a configuration within Launch where you could tell it where to send data. So if you think about it, you could tell it where to send data to your report suites. If you want it to your dev or production report suites, you could tell it where to send it in Audience Manager and what configuration you need to send to Target. So Launch kind of makes it a lot easier to deploy this. As well, one other good thing with Launch is the schema you create within the AEP platform, you could just pull it into your Launch property using the AEP web extension and pull your schema right into a single data element. And then you could have Launch basically tell it when to trigger that event. So Launch is going to make it a lot easier. If you were to implement this in another tag management system, I'm sure TMSs are going to evolve and start creating extensions for this, but I do see there'll probably be some custom code, and you'll have to figure out a way to bring in your XDM schema into that tag manager. So.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I keep hearing a lot about this XDM. I'll ask you some questions around that later. But it does sound like cross-platform is a keyword here for the Web SDK. You can do it in Launch. You may also do it in another TMS. You can send data to different places, not just Analytics or Adobe products. Sounds exciting. So we kind of touched on this one, Andy. Migrating from DTM to Launch. Some people just did that. Do they need to now migrate to the Web SDK? Just to be crystal clear.
No, yeah, to be crystal clear, a resounding no. You do not need to migrate to the Web SDK. It's completely optional. It's an extra tool in the toolbox for your disposal, and it's completely separate from Launch. So just think of it as it's a bundle of all of the Adobe core extensions for Target, Analytics, Audience Manager, et cetera, all bundled into one. So typically what you would do is you would just use the new AEP extension in Launch and instead of the other ones. And this absolutely does not replace Launch. Launch is still the activation mechanism, the delivery mechanism, whereas the Web SDK is really just more of the conglomeration of all of the core functionality of the various Adobe solutions.
Got it. Okay. So similar to TMS, data layers, right? I'm wondering, does my data layer now have to be an Adobe data layer? I keep hearing about that. So Andy.
No, it doesn't necessarily have to be an Adobe data layer. It doesn't have to follow a, like a rigid schema, kind of like Telium or GTM or anything like that, at least not to use the Web SDK. Now there is a special sort of Adobe data layer, and that is that XDM object. and that is used basically for AEP. But as we discussed earlier, you don't have to be an AEP customer to take advantage of the Web SDK. However, if you are planning to eventually get involved and perhaps purchase an AEP license, then you want to seriously consider creating or modeling your data layer off of the XDM schema, because that'll just save you a step in the migration. It'll just make things a little bit more future-proof. Okay.
Okay. So definitely something to learn now about the future and planning towards that. XDM, I have some questions, but before I go into that, I do want to clarify one thing that I've also, I've seen many people talk about it, and even myself, I was confused for it for a while. But there's something called the Adobe Client Data Layer, and that's completely separate from this. That has nothing to do with Web SDK. It's another effort being driven by the Experience Manager team. They're trying to create their own data layer standards and so on. So it may play together, but totally separate products, in case you were wondering, like I was.
Yeah, if you're going to be forward-looking, look toward XDM for sure.
So what is the XDM? What does it mean to my data layer, Geoff?
All right, so first, it stands for Experience Data Model, okay? And it's a standardized JSON structure that Adobe created. The best way to think about it is really, it's the communication between your web browser and edge network, basically communicates in XDM responses. So think of XDM as translating your browser information, your identities, and even your data layer, right, structure into a common structure format, right? And someone on the beta, I forget who it was, someone best explained it. Think of it as your SDR built into a schema on the website. And the schema can be broken into categories, and Adobe actually has a lot of pre-built structures already, which is nice. But they have pre-built ones for things like commerce, for products, for web behavior. And the way Adobe kind of explains it is XDM schema is really built on two things. It's classes of data and a concept they're calling mix-ins. And a class is really a small subset of behaviors that could happen on your website. And it really describes a business object on your site. And then a mix-in, which are fully customizable, they're basically reusable fields, and it could be one or more attributes, for instance. And it could be included to the schema or to a class. And a good example of this would be your product info. So your old product string, environments, like the device type, the browser, the place, something like a loyalty program. Let's say you have a loyalty program. You could store customer information here, like name, address, email address. And then as well as privacy consent, right? So they have a module they're building for privacy consent. So it's a lot to digest. XDM, there is a lot of good information on GitHub where they're posting this for the schema. So it has tons of relevant information. We could even post the GitHub link in a follow-up email for you guys because it's forever changing. But I hope that kind of helps answer what XDM is.
Okay, it does answer. It also creates some new questions. And actually somebody in the audience asked this question as well. It's an anonymous attendee, around eVars and props, right? So now that we have this XDM format, what happens to eVars, props, events? Can you explain how this maps to analytics, Geoff?
Yes, so this was the biggest question I had coming into this. So yeah, you have to figure out a way to map your XDM JSON format to props, eVars, and events, so it could populate in Adobe Analytics correctly. Right now, current state of the Web SDK, you have to use processing rules. I know this is kind of taking a step back, right? But for instance, Adobe Analytics will receive your XDM format, and then you have to go in and create processing rules to have it mapped to your eVars, to your props and events. Adobe knows this is kind of a gap, and they're working on solutions on creating that mapping for you or making it easier to do the mapping. And if you think about, if you're a client and you have a lot of custom dimensions, a lot of custom metrics and props, maintaining that and using processing rules, that's a lot of effort and a lot of governance oversight. So right now, that's really how XDM maps into analytics.
Okay, so processing rules. A lot of power, a lot of responsibility as well with processing rules. You can certainly do some damage there.
Yeah.
But interesting. Okay. But what happens to the variables going forward? Do they? Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, nothing really happens. I mean, I don't see Adobe getting rid of props and eVars anytime soon. I think future state, and when you're thinking about this, Adobe Analytics will probably move to like just a dimension and metric type format to account for this for this XDM format. But yeah, AA variables aren't going anywhere anytime soon.
The dimension and metric comment, it makes sense. You know, you almost have seen that blurring between props and eVars already with workspace. Yeah. So it kind of, yeah, I can see that. Makes total sense. But everything you just said has big implication on implementers, QAing, debugging. What happens with that?
Yeah, so QA teams will probably have to evolve. You know, instead of looking for what is firing in the eVar and what's firing in the event in the web beacon, you're probably gonna have to shift that to learning how to debug XDM. As well, I do know Adobe in their, I think their legacy debugger tool used to be able to see post-processing hits. So for instance, you would be able to see it in that debugger where that XDM kind of maps to in the whatever eVar or whatever prop of you're choosing. However, I think in their new Experience Cloud debugger, I don't know if they have the post-processing hit in place. I'll have to follow up on that. But QA teams will probably have to evolve to account for the schema. In my mind, it's a little easier because QA teams will really only have to debug one set of data, right? They aren't going to have to go into Target to see what's happening in Target, what's happening in Audience Manager, what's happening in Analytics. They could really look at this XDM format. So in my mind, I think there'll be some education you will need to do, but in my mind, it becomes easier. Okay,
got it. And seems like the experience platform debugger will start playing a bigger role. All right, switching to Target, Andy. So what's different with the Target implementation?
So, well, with every major Adobe, product advancement comes terminology changes. So you're going to see a lot of new words in Target. And for good reason. They're kind of shifting the Web SDK and Target to be more of an engine. So you'll see some terms start to be phased out even more. So for example, mboxes, got renamed to locations, which are now called decision scopes. So now you can see that they're kind of shifting Target to be more of a decisioning engine more than anything else. So you'll see a lot of that kind of stuff, which is a little bit of a learning curve, but it's all pretty well documented so far. All the same core features are still there. The ability to automatically apply stuff to the DOM, like with the global mbox or the page load event. Flicker handling is still, very much the same. If you're using an asynchronous deployment, you still need a Flicker handling sort of script above either your library or your tag management solution. If you have a synchronous deployment, which we don't really recommend, then you can still manage the Flicker handling, directly in the AEP Web SDK. So yeah, you'll see a lot of things that are kind of just shifted and more genericized around Target, which might throw some people off guard. But it's a change in the right direction, I think, especially when you think about single page apps and using feature flags and stuff that aren't necessarily the traditional, I'm replacing the hero banner with another hero banner. You can really tell that they're, shifting with what else is going on in the industry. So in terms of data getting to Target, essentially your XDM object is automatically mapped to essentially what were mbox parameters before. So that's all done automatically. You don't have to, explicitly send an mbox parameter. Anything in that XDM object is sent to Target automatically, basically. However, there are some limitations right now, at least with Target, and this is a new thing. It's constantly being updated, but if you are like a Target Premium customer right now, recommendations isn't supported. I'm not sure. I don't think A4T is supported yet. So yeah, there's some. You definitely want to check the release notes. Definitely check in on the GitHub site. Adobe actually maintains a use cases GitHub site that's linked to from their documentation that shows you all of the features that are currently supported, all the stuff that's in progress, and all of the stuff that is kind of in the backlog. So definitely pay attention to that, because depending on your use case, there may be critical features that you need that might be in the pipeline, but just aren't available yet. A big one that I noticed was that profile parameters, which are like the bread and butter of Target, storing persistent information in the user's profile, just frankly wasn't supported yet. So although it's in the pipeline, pay particular attention to the features and functions you need before you just go and start implementing.
Okay.
But aside from the stuff in the pipeline, it's Target, it's ATJS, at least in terms of the core features. But yeah, just pay particular attention to what's currently supported versus what's in the pipeline.
Okay. Yeah, sounds like there's a lot of like pipes are changing, almost like a Ferrari being changed the wheels in mid-flight almost, or mid-drive. A lot of nuances, which is interesting. Which kind of takes me to my last question. We have 3 minutes left. For early adopters, do you recommend them moving to the Web SDK, or what are your thoughts? Should people migrate to it? I want to start with Geoff, because Andy, you sort of went into it a little bit. So Jess, give me your thoughts.
Yeah, sure. From analytics perspective, it all depends on kind of your analytics maturity. If you are new to Adobe Analytics, or if you're migrating to Adobe Analytics, I think it would be a wise choice to go down this XDM route in the Web SDK for your implementation. If you're a current client that leverages a lot of props, eVars, dimensions, all that, I would just say proceed cautiously. It is going to be some work, right? And in my mind, the better your data layer is, the better this will be, the easier this will be. If you have a pretty robust data layer, it's going to make that mapping to XDM just a lot easier. In my mind, I think this is a really good thing that Adobe is moving to. If you think about it too, from unifying data sources, when they enable server-side forwarding, hopefully later this year, if you think about it, you could send this data to Adobe Analytics, but you could also send this data directly to your enterprise data warehouse or cloud platforms. So from that perspective, you will have a single unified data set that you could bring in internally and leverage that data. So I think the direction they're moving to is very good. So.
Okay. Andy, any additional remarks there?
Yeah, I mean, I echo Jeff's comments there. Yeah, it's really cool. I don't recommend everyone to jump in on the latest and greatest bleeding edge technology. I mean, you really shouldn't do that with anything, and this is no exception. But if you have a smaller microsite or something that you want to test it out on, yeah, by all means. Just be sure to check in on the use cases to make sure that everything that you need is actually supported, and tinker with it, get experience with it. I mean, this is the direction Adobe's heading, so any experience you can get hands-on is a good thing. Just do so cautiously and have fun with it.
All right, have fun. That's important. All right, so we are at time. There's a ton of questions, which is amazing. I think we're gonna we answered some of them live. We're gonna have to answer these in a follow-up email. But yeah, I think we're good. Appreciate everybody joining. Amazing questions, and hope to see you soon in the next webinar, which we have next week. I think we have it around DMPs and CDPs. So yeah, thanks everyone.